Wait, how long until we go live? All right, guys, welcome to the Trey Cole Show. Today, as y'all know, I've been in Nebraska for almost a week now, campaigning for President Trump and just kind of getting out there and talking to voters in Omaha. So I've been campaigning with President Trump and also for Congressman Don Bacon. And while I've been there, I've had a lot of really cool conversations with voters and also made a really cool connection with Alex Chapa, who is going to be my guest today on the Trey Cole Show. And we're just going to talk about what it's like to be a Christian conservative on the college campus in Texas and in America right now. And also talk about our faith, about border security and immigration. And then there's some potential for just kind of random conversation about football and wherever it leads us. So Alex, thanks for coming on. Alex is a really great guy. He is a government major at UT, and he's hoping to go to law school at Vanderbilt, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. And so, Alex, how long have you been working for Vanguard and doing door-to-door campaigning?
My junior year of high school, I studied with Governor Abbott and Ted Cruz. It was like a joint thing down in Laredo with the Webb County Young Republicans. That was kind of where I got my start on, on the ground campaign. It was a really cool experience, but at the time it was volunteering. So I was just doing it out of, hoping that, there was this movement of this blue wave, supposed blue wave, and trying to turn Texas blue. And that was laughable, right? But down in Laredo, it is a pretty divided, leaning liberal city. So there's a lot of work to be done for Republicans. So I felt like it was my duty to get on the ground and do as much as I could in my hometown. So it started there. But then just this summer, amid COVID, I had lost some opportunities on the legislative side, like some internships. So I was pretty bummed. But then I got the offer to work for Senator Pete Flores with Vanguard, on behalf of Pete Flores for Vanguard, block walking and campaigning, canvassing down in San Antonio. And that was a really cool opportunity. I started on the first week of August, and I got to do direct voter contact there in San Antonio and just get people out to vote Republican this year, make sure Texas stays red, as San Antonio is a huge battleground this coming general election. It's pretty divided right now down in San Antonio. It's a very close races in city council, close races when it comes to the state Senate, the United States Senate. Everything's just really close down there. So it was a cool opportunity to get down, meet new people, make connections, and get to work for Senator Pete Flores. What's actually really interesting about that race, I was telling Trey, was that race, I also felt a little more compassionate about it because Pete Flores is the first Hispanic conservative in the Texas legislature. And that district that he's serving, Senate District 19, had been Democratic, I believe, for the last 175 years since the Reconstruction era. So it's been a solid blue district. And the fact that in the 2018 special election, it went red, sent motivation and shockwaves throughout the entire state, as it allowed not only Republicans to have the supermajority in the Senate, but it also showed that minorities aren't an automatic vote for the Democratic Party like they've always assumed. And in fact, it's a 70% Hispanic district, yet Pete Flores got over 60% of the Hispanic vote. So he won it with ease. So it sent shockwaves, and it was really cool to work on that re-election campaign because it's going to be a really tight race this November in his district. So that was a really fun opportunity. Then about a week ago, I was telling him, literally, I just landed here in Omaha on Friday because on Thursday night at about 7 p.m., leadership here at the Trump campaign here in Omaha called me, hey, with Vanguard, obviously, right? They called me, hey, can you fly out to Nebraska tomorrow afternoon? We need people. We need more boots on the ground here. And I was like, well, sounds like a cool opportunity to meet new people. We're already touching the same doors over and over again down in San Antonio. So it would be a cool opportunity to meet new voters, make new networking connections here in Nebraska with fellow coworkers. And it's been a cool opportunity for sure.
Yeah. I know for me, like I've never done political block walking before, political door-to-door stuff, but I've done a lot of prayer walking, things like that. But I've never done something in this kind of climate where it's so cold. And it's not even as cold as it's going to be yet. Like it was 36 today?
Yeah, it was really
maybe a little bit under. And that's supposed to be like warm over the next few weeks. So what's it like being in San Antonio? I know here, like we're dressed in big coats and jeans. Yeah. What is it like in San Antonio? Like, how do you prepare for block walking in 100 degrees with 60% humidity?
The climate is definitely a huge disparity. I mean, I was actually explaining to him, like when I first started first week of August, it was about 107 with 60% humidity. Like I was sweating. It was terrible. Thankfully, our boss down there, the project manager down in San Antonio, didn't really have a strict dress code. We could wear shorts. We could wear whatever we want. So I usually wore like a Texas Rangers t-shirt and some shorts. Like it was really hard to keep cool. You had to carry a lot of waters in your backpack. I actually had, those backpacks that you have at the festivals, like at concerts. Where, I forgot what they're called. The camelbacks. Yeah, there we go. Yeah. I actually had to carry around a camelback and sometimes refill it. Like it was that hot. Like it was hard. So I actually told him that it's a welcome change to go to this extreme, like 30 degrees, even though we're Texas boys. Like I will say I do appreciate it more because the heat was really hard to work in sometimes, especially when you mix it with humidity. It's not like dry heat like you have in like Arizona and stuff. It's straight humidity and heat. Like that's not a good combo. So even if you're under a roof, it's still burning. Like it sucks. So I will say it is a welcome change being up here in this climate. Although sometimes it is a little hard, especially when it starts like having a snowy or rainy mix, like that icy mix.
Like
with
today.
Yeah, that's a little tough. Like this morning it was a little tough, but I do prefer it definitely over the heat.
Yeah. I know, like, when I walked outside today, I was planning on dressing up a little bit and, like, looking a little bit nicer than this. But then walked outside and said, oh, man, I don't know if this is going to work. Like, there was sleet. And then Sunday morning, there was snow on rooftops, and it had been 70, like, that Saturday.
Yeah.
So it was just crazy, just the weather change. But it's been really cool to be out here and, like, get to have really cool conversations with conservatives. Also, our car. Between you, me, Carlos, John, and San Antonio, man, we have a time. We have a great time. And so what's it like being you mentioned I mentioned you go to UT. And so you're a government major, which is basically the political science department, the equivalent for A&M. So what's it like being a conservative on such a liberal campus that is known for being pretty hostile, the city and the university, toward conservatives?
Yeah, so I know a lot of something that's a lot of people's minds now when they think of Austin is how Austin just recently defunded the police. Mm-hmm. And there's actually been a lot of statistics coming out and straight from the governor and from Attorney General Ken Paxton that crime is actually on the rise in Austin. So shocker, right? I wonder why. Defunding the police totally not the reason. Right. Yeah, I bet it's the Republicans there, but being serious, it is a little worrisome. I don't want to say like, I don't want to sound like I'm scared or like, oh, it's really scared being like I fear for my safety being a conservative at UT. It's not really like that, but I will say it's definitely a hostile environment towards conservatives. And the reason I say that is because for example, one thing that I was explaining to Trey is this one class I'm taking, my intro to religion course, right? Yeah. So I was excited to take this course. I had to do it for my core, but I was excited to take this course, not only because I'm a Christian, but also because I just wanted to learn more about like other religions too, like the introductions to theirs and stuff like that. It was an opportunity to learn more. So I was excited, but it turns out the course started in August and all we've gone over the last 2.5 months is Karl Marx. And that has not been fun. Now you're probably wondering right now as a listener, what the heck does Karl Marx have to do with religion? So we go over his philosophies with Hegel, and the links that the professor makes are essentially that we need communism and socialism. We need a more socialized country because there's too much income inequality, social inequalities in this country. Why do we have social and racial and economic inequalities? Well, it's because of Christianity. That's the argument that we get. So that's the narrative that's pushed in the course. So right off the gate, you already targeted if you're a Christian conservative, because if you write a paper that says, oh, Christianity is not the cause for this, well, then you are already starting off on the wrong foot in the professor's eyes, because the professor completely disagrees with you. He's very hostile. He has been very hostile towards the Christian faith. In fact, there's actually an assignment called Christianity Equals Slavery. And then right now, over the last 2 weeks, we've been reading Malcolm X and Karl Marx. And in the assignments, the presentation, like this lesson plan has been called Loop of Muslim Cool. And it's this theory about Islam and the African-American culture and how they intertwine together. But it's essentially how Christians have kept minorities down, and Christianity in the United States especially has been oppressive towards minorities. It's this insane theory. And so, but it goes to show it is a hostile environment regardless of what leadership at UT takes, because I could promise you if it was the other way around, that professor would get fired, wouldn't have more than a lecture at that university without getting fired. So the idea that it's a joke. But I'm not going to pretend like there aren't conservatives at UT. There are definitely a good amount of conservatives. I've made some really nice, awesome Christian conservative friends along the way. It's a really awesome university. I have nothing against it besides just that the liberal arts department is very, very liberal. I won't say the same about McCombs, the business department, but the liberal arts department is very liberal. And being a Christian conservative is not that easy, and a government major at UT, because you're going to have to write things that make you uncomfortable. I know Ben Shapiro has actually talked a lot about how while he was a law student at Harvard, one thing that was so helpful for him is that he always had to write liberal papers, right, for the purpose of the grade. And I was actually telling Trey similarly, like, my dream is either UT Law or Vanderbilt Law. So I can't really screw up GPA-wise. Like, my GPA's got to stay above a 3.7. So what does that mean? I have to write what the professors want me to write. And it's really unfortunate because there is no free thinking. There's no freedom of thought. And it's essentially these, some of these universities have become liberal think tanks, and there's no more marketplace of ideas and free exchange of ideas going on anymore. And you would think, it being a liberal campus would be more open and diverse to new ideas, but it's the exact opposite. And I know you guys have heard this over and over again, but it's true. It really is true. As someone who's experiencing it firsthand, I don't know what else to say. Like, it's happening to me, and I don't know what to say. Like, I wanted to believe it wasn't true, but it is. And so that happens. But I do also, one thing I love about the university is the amount of opportunity it has, regardless of your political affiliation. So if you are on the left or you are on the right, there are clubs, there are organizations, there are networking opportunities, there are internships available. I mean, it's still Texas, right? So we have a lot of Republican congressmen, Republican leaders, Christian leaders in and around Austin. I've recently been looking for a church now that I'm officially going to probably move there in the spring, like for good. I was just moving back and forth because of Zoom University and stuff. So, and I was working on campaigns, so I took advantage and I worked while Zoom happened. But I do plan to move up permanently in January. But there are opportunities there, so I'm really excited about that. And then just being a government major, I was explaining one advantage. The reason I actually chose UT government over the Bush School at A&M was because the capital is in Austin. And if you're a UT government major, you get automatic, mostly, I'm aware of, I think most people get automatic acceptance into the state internship program, and sometimes even the DC capital internship program. So there's a really cool opportunity there, but it is, like we mentioned earlier, you do have to swallow a pill for those opportunities sometimes because of the professors and just the environment, the political climate at UT for liberal arts majors.
Right. I know, like, even for me at A&M, I took this sociology class last semester. And on the first day of class, the professor says that the problem with America is straight, white, Christian, male conservatives. And I just kind of silently and in my head raised my hand. I said, wow, I'm all of those things. Like, I am what's wrong with America. Like, just kick me out. Like, man, that sucks. Yep. And so every class he would just hammer at my worldview. And he would use sites like Vox and it's okay to use Vox if you call it what it is and call it left leaning, but he would call it a moderate site and a down the middle source of news, which it is just not. Like, I don't even think Vox would claim to be a down the middle source of news. And just like the way that he would frame some of his statistics, I would have to have conversations with some of the people that sat next to me in class and explain to them why these statistics were skewed and why he framed them a certain way. And so it was really interesting, even at what's considered a more conservative campus, there's still a very heavy indoctrination and liberal impact from the professors and from the teachers. And even like I don't know why this man said this, but he was my intro to public admin professor my first semester at A&M. And one of the days he walks into class and basically calls Donald Trump a socialist. Like, I don't know what he was trying to prove there or why he thought that, but just like the thought that anything he says is going to be taken as gospel truth. And that's really interesting because a lot of students do that. they're like, oh, my professor said this, like it has to be true. And so even a lot of my friends that don't research politics all the time, they believe that. They believe whatever their professor tells them. And that's so dangerous for America, because that's not only happening on the liberal campuses like UT, it's also happening on what's considered the more conservative campuses like A&M. So that's just really scary. But so you have been in politics a long time, it sounds like, but you are a minority, right? And most times Democrats claim that conservatives and Republicans are racist and that minorities are very against things like immigration for Hispanic Americans, or the wall, things like that. And so can you kind of walk us through what it means to be a minority that is a conservative and a Republican?
Yeah. So sometimes I feel like I fit a lot of the ultimate minority bubbles just because, one, I'm a Christian Hispanic. There's not that many. Usually the Hispanics tend to be Catholic. I also am a conservative, Trump supporter, Republican, whatever you want to call me. I mean, obviously a Christian first, right? But the secondary titles. So, getting those titles, that's like one joke that I know I've made with you is like the ultimate enemy of the white liberal is the Republican or conservative minority, because that just undermines their entire identity politics arguments. It completely undermines it, and nothing frustrates them more than that. So right off the get-go, I'm already a target for that. But I will say, and one thing I do want to talk about is like what happened in Laredo the last couple of weeks. I'm sure you heard about it, the Trump trains that happened in Laredo. So there was a Trump train of 6K people and 11,000 people over the last 2.5 weeks. So I do want to give props to my hometown. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to attend those because I was working in San Antonio and now up here in Omaha. But there's a growing support, and there's growing support from the minority community for conservatives and Trump, because the reality is Democrats have pawned and have used minorities for a very long time and taken advantage of their vote and taken it for granted. That's the best way to word it. That's the fact of the matter. The idea that and this is actually something that I always give props to Kanye West for. So back in 2018, when Kanye West first put on the MAGA hat, the point that he made alongside Candace Owens was that Democrats have used the black vote to their advantage and have taken advantage and taken the black vote for granted, and that black Democrats haven't made it off the plantation yet. He used that quote. And the argument for that is that minorities have maintained dependency on the government historically. And that is not the fault of the minority, it's the fault of the government. And that is because Democrats have relied on, and it's the same thing that's happening in California. The reason they want mass influx of illegal immigrants, and they want to provide all these illegal immigrants with free social programs and all these things, free, right? Taxpayer funded. But yeah, these free social programs is because they realize that it's votes. Mm-hmm. And in the same way, they've kept minorities dependent on the government. And that's why that's an argument that I've made as to, and I was actually it's an argument that I've made as to why minorities are kept down, because they've historically been dependent on the government. So you look at inner city Chicago, you look at inner city Milwaukee, you look at inner city Atlanta. One of the biggest issues, I mean, you even look at South Texas sometimes too, and it's that minorities have been dependent on the government. They rely on the government for welfare. They rely on the government for food stamps, all these other things, all these other programs. And the reason that's the case is because Democrats run on, and this is actually, I know a lot of people love FDR. The biggest reason why I'm 100%, this one part of FDR that I'm 100% against is he started the American welfare state. Mm-hmm. And how did he do that exactly? Well, he ran, and this is how he won the South and Georgia and everywhere. Idea that, well, tell your local congressman, he would tell fellow Democrats, tell your local constituencies that if they don't vote Democrat this November, they're going to lose all their welfare. They're going to lose all their food stamps. So basically all the aid that the government passed out after the Great Depression, FDR basically ran on that. If you don't vote Democrat this November, you're losing all of that. And the South was totally burned, especially by the Great Depression. So that's why FDR kept winning and winning, was president for 12, 14 years, something crazy like that. It's because he kept running on that. In the same way, Democrats never let that go. And since then, they learned from that, and they have continued to keep it, especially specifically, if you look statistically, they've kept the minority down by running on the idea that, well, we're going to keep telling you we're going to keep giving you aid, just keep voting for us.
Mm-hmm.
And when instead of wanting to work harder, it's instilling the value that, you know what? What's the incentive to go work if I'm going to get that $1,000 check at the end of the month, right? And in Texas, as you guys may know, it's called the Lone Star card, right? So, what's the incentive to work? And I could totally see that. Like if I wasn't born as determined as I was, and not everyone has that naturally, then there is no incentive or there's no way to acquire that value because you've been raised and taught like, oh, the government's there for me. And that's one of the biggest flaws and problems that I have. So now tying it all the way back, that's the problem that I have. Well, that's the original point that I was making with minorities maintaining dependency on the government and how that we need to move on to a limited form of government where there is less dependency on the government. And that's how I think the minority community will succeed the most. And that's where that's what minorities are realizing in the status quo. That's why we're seeing breakthroughs in races like Pete Flores winning in Senate District 19. That doesn't just happen. The guy he was going, the candidate he was going against, which I believe was Pete Gallego, he didn't have any scandal or anything against him. There was no reason for him to lose. Besides, it was straight policy. And he was beaten by a political outsider. So Pete Flores wasn't even a politician. This guy was a game warden. He came in and he beat him. And it wasn't because Gallego was scandal ridden. No, it's Hispanics are starting to learn that, and that's what's happening in South Texas. That's what's happening in Laredo. That's exactly, and it's the most frustrating thing to the white liberal, because it's there goes their woe to me argument and their identity politics arguments are going away. So, I guess that sums up like that point in that question. But yeah.
And so it's really what you're saying is that in order for minorities to succeed, they need to stop relying on the government.
Yes.
And in large part, Democrats need their reliance because that's what gets them votes. That's what gets them in office. And that's what continues to give them power.
Exactly. It's all about power.
Exactly. And in order for minorities to succeed the quickest and at the highest levels, you need less government interaction.
Exactly.
And that's a lot of it is built on culture. And because of just the culture of a lot of minority groups, they are taught that the government owes them things. And they grow up thinking that they deserve something from the government, when in fact, the government has nothing to give. Everything the government has is from the worker, the American worker. And so the government has no right to just give out things. And so a lot of that is from that perspective of minorities that are told that they need the government to be able to succeed in life.
Exactly.
Are setting themselves up for failure. And so that's a really interesting point. And so not only are you a conservative, but you're also a Christian. And so walk us through kind of how you became a Christian. I know that you were raised Catholic, and so you then converted to what you would say is more Baptist, correct?
Yes.
And so kind of walk us through that, and then we'll get into one last thing before we wrap up.
So my faith, I guess we'll go into my testimony and stuff. So originally I grew up like it was a traditional Catholic, just because everyone in Laredo tend to be traditional Catholics, meaning even if you don't go to church, you're Catholic by tradition, because that's just something that's very prevalent among the Latin American community and just the Latin community in general. So I grew up a traditional Catholic. I never went to church. I knew God was real. I believed in God because my mom would read me like the kids' Bible when I was young all the time. So I knew the gospel, and I knew some things about the gospel, creation and the fall and things like that. Like I had gist of it. I didn't really understand theology that well, but I had a gist of what God was. So I kind of believed in, but didn't really. So I definitely wasn't a believer. I wasn't a believer at the time. Then around my freshman year, a girl invited me to a game night at my local youth group called Grace Bible Church down in Laredo. And so it was a time where I wouldn't say I was depressed, but I wasn't the happiest person. I wasn't that determined like I am now. So I will say like my conversion was the most life-changing thing ever. But it wasn't the best time of my life at all. Like I was always stressed out with school, with debate, and all these other extracurriculars that I was in. So it was whatever. And then, so I get invited to that game. And the only reason I went, me being a huge sports fan, I love soccer and I love playing football and soccer, especially. I went because that's what this girl told me we were going to do. So I go. It was game night. I had a lot of fun. I played football and soccer as I planned. But at the same time, that's where I met the youth pastor. His name was Luke, and I consider him to this day even a mentor because he played a very significant role in my conversion and me finding Christ. So my freshman year, I started going to this. After that game night, I started going back again and again because I had conversations with this guy about sports, politics, religion, and I found it extremely fascinating. It was especially religion, Christianity. I was getting all this information, and it was so much that it's something in my heart. It just sparked a flame in me, and I wanted to learn more. So I was asking all these questions, even to the point where I was almost debating them on if Christ was real, not if Jesus was real specifically, but just if the organized religion itself was real, and all these other things, all these other theological differences between I've ever met in my life. So I'm so thankful to God that I met him because I learned a lot. And a year later, I ended up actually getting baptized on Palm Sunday in 2018. So, that kind of that was like a huge jump, right? But essentially, I kept talking. I started reading the Bible more. I started even doing daily devotionals. I had this study. I actually bought this study Bible from R.C. Sproul, Reformation Study Bible. And I started reading a lot. And what I liked specifically about the Reformation Study Bible, it had a lot of facts. It had like the origin, the writers, when it was written, by who it was written. It had a lot of information that maybe like the average person doesn't care about, but I wanted to know more. I wanted to know how, basically that this was legit. And I know it sounds crazy to say that now, but at the time I was just questioning. So, and then he also got me books from C.S. Lewis and stuff that also played a huge role. So I'm mixing that, watching John MacArthur videos on YouTube, which I still do to this day, and things like that were totally transforming and life-changing. It led me to walk. It led me to walk with Christ and see the world from a more Christian worldview, and it just totally altered all my values, all my determination, my ambition, everything skyrocketed. Like I wanted to do so much in my life because I realized how important life is and what the role we can play as Christians. Being outsiders, that we're not meant. This is not our home. Heaven is our home. So that idea stuck with me. It still sticks with me because as Christians, we can play such influential roles in life. And one thing I know, like the way I've been able to convince people and the way I've been able to talk to people about politics and been able to convert them from left wing to right wing or et cetera, things like that. I know that I've been called to do the same when it comes to religion. And it's something that I definitely need to improve in, but it's something that I feel motivated to do now, and to use to my best abilities, of course, to play a role in living a life that exemplifies Christ, but also I'm able to, in that way, I'm also able to talk to people and convert people and things like that, like we're called to do, right?
Yeah.
At the end of Matthew, right? So the Great Commission, I believe. Mm-hmm. So I mean, I guess that's the little gist of my faith, but because I mean, we could talk hours and hours about my testimony, but basically, at that same time when I was talking to Luke, who played that very influential role, when I was about to get baptized, about 2 weeks before, I told my parents about me wanting to get baptized. I honestly did not know how they would react because I knew they were traditionally Catholic, but I never thought my dad would ever go to church, not because he's a bad person or anything, but just because he never liked the church. He didn't really like, I maybe he believed in God. I didn't know. I'd never really had that conversation with him. I knew my mom did. I knew she read the Bible still and stuff, but they never went to church. So I didn't know how they were going to react, but I told them finally. And what was so amazing, and I know God did this, is my parents were so supportive of me going to youth group, because it was before I drove, and they drove me every Wednesday. I literally would get out from debate practice at 5:30 and they would drive me to church, and then they would have to pick me up again. Like they would have to do all these rounds for me, right? And including like Wednesdays was church, like every other day was debate and competitions on the weekends. Like they had to do so much, and they still did it. They still took me on Sundays and stuff. So when I told them like, oh, like I want to go to church on Sundays more, like they thankfully, like I was able to have the conversation with them. God gave me the motivation, the power, the ambition to do it, determination, and I did it. And my family came with me. So that honestly played like that's when I really knew like my life had changed so much and it's for the better. Like Christ was really working through me, and so my family started going to church, and I never thought my dad would like it, but he tells me after the first day, but even continuously the next couple of weeks, I really like this church. I want to keep going. Like this is awesome. Having family lunches after and everything. It was life changing. It was amazing. It's something that, I mean, it just brings me so much joy to talk about that. My family still goes to church to this day, even amid like the pandemic and stuff, because of that moment. And I get baptized 2 weeks later, and all these things. We continuously go every Sunday after that, and it's crazy how recently it was. Because I know a lot of people's stories are when they're younger, but for me, like it happened like in high school, and it was very recent, and it's something that just makes me so happy to talk about, and it's also motivation, I guess.
Yeah.
So yeah.
That's awesome. And so you said that one of the things that changed was you saw the world through a Christian worldview, right? And that you wanted to reflect Christ with your life. And so that's one thing that this podcast is all about. It's about politics from a Christian worldview and showing Christ through politics. And a lot of times conservatives are called racist, which you cannot be a racist and a Christian. Like I don't believe that you can walk with Christ and see other races as less than you.
Of course.
And so that brings me to the wall. And a lot of times that's projected as a racist symbol, especially toward Hispanics and Mexicans. And as a Christian, I don't see that as racist. As a white conservative male straight Christian, all the things that are wrong with the world.
Target, yeah.
Right. I don't see that as a racist symbol. I see that as a sign of national sovereignty. And I see that as a sign that our immigration system is broken and needs reform. And the only way to have that reform is by having that border security. And after establishing that security, pouring money into the immigration court so that immigration can flow more easily. But as a Hispanic American, as a conservative, as a Christian, how do you view the wall as a minority, not only in race and in ethnicity, but also a minority in the fact that you are a minority who is a conservative?
Yeah.
So what does that look like for you? How do you view the wall and view immigration? And how does that impact your relationships with other people that may share your ethnicity, but not your same views?
Yeah. So, I mean, a lot of that narrative that you push is something that is pushed by the white liberal, but it isn't necessarily true. And another argument that is ignored by the white liberal that I like to make is you look across Latin America, there are countries that exercise their national sovereignty all throughout the Western Hemisphere. I mean, most specifically, Mexico. Mexico has a wall on their southern border, again, like on the southern border connecting them to Guatemala. I've never, ever heard people, the white liberals, say, oh, Mexico is racist. Because, I mean, they have a wall. So, I mean, the idea that national sovereignty in any sense is racist is absurd. It's a joke, and it's just the narrative that's pushed, because instead of having a one-on-one talk or talking policy, they just want to undermine the argument, the factual argument, with identity politics. Because the funny thing about identity politics is, that's why I always make the joke with my friends that it's so easy to be a liberal, that if I was a liberal, I would be such a good liberal, because all I would have to do is I don't even have to think. I don't even have to use facts. I just have to undermine your argument with identity politics. Like, your argument regarding the Constitution doesn't matter because, the framers of the Constitution were racist. Therefore, throw the constitutional arguments away because it doesn't matter. Imagine that. So, I mean, that's exactly what they do when it comes to this kind of policy. And that's something that a lot of people in my hometown of Laredo are figuring out. And that's that's why you see these Trump trains of 6K, 11K in a city where the average voting numbers are 15 to 25K. I want to keep in mind. So voter turnout is already very low in Laredo. The fact that we're seeing 6 to 11K numbers is a huge signal of a moving swivel, right? Like the swivel's moving towards the right in Laredo, because they're realizing that. Now, when it comes to the wall, I don't think it's necessarily racist to, I don't think at all that it's racist to practice national sovereignty, considering like the example that I gave about Mexico, but also it's not, I haven't heard once that Republicans say that they are against immigration. I've heard they're against illegal immigration. That's something Senator Ted Cruz and Senator Cornyn, who represent Texas, have made. But they're pro-legal immigration, and that's something they've said. And they're for reforming immigration. That and honestly, I know both sides are for reforming immigration, because right now the lottery system just isn't right. I know a lot of people on both sides agree, but there hasn't been any negotiation between the two sides because the left has become so radical and so polarized that it's not even about reforming. It's just about opening the border completely. I could tell you firsthand example when Nancy Pelosi came down to Laredo. I actually debated her. I asked her a couple of questions and we got a little heated, but I actually got interviewed by KSAT 12, the San Antonio News after. I'll show you the video after. It's a cool instance. But anyway, at that time, she literally, when she was in Laredo, she was there with Congressman Henry Cuellar at Texas A&M International University. She goes off and says, we need to stop building walls. We need to stop this rhetoric about building walls. We need to build bridges. We need to open the border completely. She completely endorsed right in front of my eyes the idea of open borders. So the argument from some moderate Democrats that that's fake news, it's not. I mean, I have it on video. It happened in my hometown at TAMU in February of 2018. And if anybody, you can drop a link talk about it in the comments if anyone wants to see it, and I'll send it to you through DM. I have no problem. But
we can even put the link on.
We could, that's fine. We'll do that. And I mean, she endorsed the idea of open borders. So now going back, so Republicans are for reforming immigration, and they are pro-legal immigration. That's never been a problem. The problem is illegal immigration. One, because this country is already in so much debt, we can't afford the illegal immigration. Secondly, especially after the pandemic, there's already so much job shortages right now that we're undergoing. I mean, obviously, we're having that great American comeback, and it's improving. The unemployment rate is starting to come back down. But the fact of the matter is that it's still pretty high right now at 7%, and illegal immigration will not help that. In fact, we don't need to go deep into the economic philosophies. If you do, we can probably do another episode on that. But obviously, from an economic standpoint, illegal immigration does not benefit the economy. It does not benefit wages. I mean, it's just bad all around, right? And we can go deeper into that philosophy later, because that's one of my fortes. I love economics, fiscal policy. So we can talk about that later. But essentially, long story short, as a Hispanic, especially in Laredo, illegal immigration, I can tell you from my perspective, has not benefited Laredo in any way. It's actually hurt, because now I'll give you an example. Being an electrician north of San Antonio, you're making way over $50. You're making $75 to $100 an hour. But in Laredo, you're probably making $15, $20 an hour. Why is that? Because illegal immigrants are coming and doing the job for cheaper. And why is that? Because there's no wages. They're paid in cash because it's illegal. So they're paid in cash. So they undercut labor. They undercut the American taxpayer already there. So we don't even have to get into the conversation about them using up social programs and stuff like that. That could be given to the less fortunate American taxpayer. But we don't even have to get into that. We could just talk about how they're also, I mean, they're not only taking jobs, but hurting wages, hurting wage growth. And this idea that, and it's not in any way to demonize illegal immigrants, but it's just the fact of the matter that this is what's happening in the status quo. So I know that's just a conversation I've had. So none of that is racist. It has nothing to do with skin color. The illegal immigrant can be from Russia. Illegal immigrant can be from anywhere in Eastern Europe, Central Europe. It doesn't matter where the illegal immigrant is from. It's just the idea that he came in illegally. You do that into any other country. You try to go cross into Russia illegally, you let me know what happens. You go into England illegally, you let me know what happens. I'm curious, all right? So, if any liberals in the comments want to give a take on that, I'm interested to hear. But yeah, so in any way that it's racist, no, it's just a narrative pushed, in my opinion, by the white liberal, because identity politics is the forefront of their arguments in the status quo, because they're trying to undermine the entire American system. They want to revolutionize, they want to change. And that's not coming out of my mouth, that's coming out of the progressive platform. So I mean, yeah.
Straight out of it.
Yeah, straight out of it. You know that. So yeah.
All right. Well, Alex, thank you for coming on. It was a lot of fun. And then maybe next week we'll see if you come back on, and maybe we can talk more about policy, maybe about some economics, and more about immigration reform, and maybe some potential solutions to that. But it was a great conversation. Looking forward to the next one. So guys, if y'all like this conversation, let me know. We'll bring Alex back up here. So until next week, we will see y'all next Tuesday at 5, hopefully. Hopefully we don't have any more issues with the recording and don't have to go live again and we can edit. But that didn't happen this week. Apparently I recorded on a corrupt file. So yeah, if y'all like this video, like, share, subscribe, tell your friends. It's a lot of fun, and it's even more fun when people watch. So see y'all next week.